Good morning. We are Chris Lee and Gavin Schoenwald of Southeastern 14 here with SEC Daily. We got a lot of stuff to cover today. We've got lots of good football games and some not so good football games. We will get to your comments and questions in the chat, so be sure to check in with those. We've had a pretty interactive show lately. Probably go over 11,000 followers here at the channel today.
There we
We're
go.
getting quick growth here lately and getting some pretty good volume. So if you're interested in advertising on the show, let us know. You can get more information there below. But Gavin, I think last week was sort of hey, thank God we have football
Yeah.
this week. It
Mhm.
may not be good football, but I guess bad football is better than no football, perhaps.
Yeah.
This week, I feel like we've got about half of the slate involving SEC teams are awful games, and about half are matchups that are intriguing for one reason or another. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. I think really every year, maybe this year more than others because of all the changes in college football. Week 1, you're glued to the TV. Everybody's, week 0, your team may not be playing. College football is back, but your fandom doesn't really get ignited until, week 1 when everyone's playing. You're watching your team, you're watching your rival's team, all that kind of stuff. And so, let us rejoice. Football's back. It's the best time of year. And we have X amount of weeks to celebrate it until we got to wait again. So definitely take it in. But yep, I think there's some, the big ones last week: LSU, Florida State. Obviously, the Clemson Duke turned out to be a huge one. Florida Utah on Thursday night. There were some good games, but now, I mean, this Bama Texas game is really intriguing me and something that I know, Chris, you and I have spoke. We're really excited to kind of jump into in detail.
Yeah, there are several games that I'm interested in watching. In fact, I can make a case that you can watch football involving SEC teams tomorrow, literally from 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
to after midnight. Vanderbilt plays at Wake Forest starting at 10 Central on Saturday. And then, of course, Auburn wraps things up on the West Coast with the game at Cal that kicks off at 9:30 Central. I'll give you the games in just a minute that involve FBS teams. Those are the only ones that we really deal with here. But so the games we won't really be talking about, but just to get these mentioned off the top, Florida takes on McNeese State. I guess Florida would like to have a better performance after what it did at Utah. Although I don't think Florida played awfully, but it wasn't what, of course, that fan base wanted. You've got Kentucky takes on Eastern Kentucky. South Carolina gets a rebound game against Furman. Tennessee takes on Austin Peay. Arkansas does not play an FCS team, but they play an FBS team that's probably worse than a couple of dozen FCS teams in Kent State. LSU's got Grambling, and that's it. So that's 5 games involving teams against FCS foes, and then that Arkansas game. And then Ball State, Georgia won't be much of a game either. The line on that is 42.5 as we speak. So here's what we've got tomorrow involving FBS teams. 10 o'clock on the ACC network. Vanderbilt and Wake Forest kickoff. That game is a 10-point line now in Wake's favor, 57.5-point over-under. I want to say that's gone up a little bit, but I could be wrong. At 11 Central on the SEC network. And by the way, just to reiterate, if you do not have the ACC network and you want to watch Vanderbilt and Wake Forest, you will not be watching that tomorrow. So head to your nearest sports bar if that's not part of your package. 11 Central, Ball State, a 42.5-point underdog, goes to Georgia. That can be seen on the SEC network. And then here come the two games, and I hate these are both at once because I really am interested to watch both these games. I'm sure I'll be doing the dual TV thing tomorrow, Gavin.
Mm-hmm.
Ole Miss travels to Tulane. Ole Miss has gone up from a 6.5-point favorite to a 7-point favorite. That one on ESPN2 at 2:30 Central. Same kickoff time. Texas A&M goes to Miami. That has gone A&M Open, I think, as a 6.5-point favorite. That now 3.5 for reasons I don't really understand, although it's more in line with what the computers have. That game on ABC. So that's one. And if you are a DirecTV subscriber like I am, I think Gavin, what's your TV package? Who's your service with?
I'm with Xfinity.
Okay, I think ABC and DirecTV are still in a contract dispute. So,
Yeah.
no, the good
Yeah.
news is you can pick that up if you've got a package that's got the SEC network, which most of
Mhm.
you out there watching have got that. So you can pick that up on the app. But if you tune into ABC in the morning, unless something's changed, they've had a dispute. So just a note for viewers here. Kent State goes to Arkansas as a 38.5-point underdog. That's not enough points, I don't think, even without Rocket Sanders. And then we get into probably the big one nationally of the day. Texas visits Alabama as a 7-point underdog, 53.5-point over under. I think that's fallen by about a field goal from where it opened. This one could be intriguing. MTSU visits Missouri. MTSU, a 21-point underdog with a 47.5-point over under. I think that's gone down a few points too.
Mhm.
And here's one that was 13.5 a couple days ago, has gone down to 9.5. Arizona is the underdog in this one, visits Mississippi State, 60.5. Not sure that's enough points there.
Mhm.
Although I don't know. I say that Mississippi State's got a good defense. Now, here's one where they don't have enough points. I don't know how the over-under on on Auburn and Cal is 54.5, but it is. Auburn, a 6.5-point favorite, going to Cal. That one could be seen ESPN at 9:30 at night. So, Gavin, we have got, by my count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6.5 games,
Yeah.
depending on whether you think MTSU can hang with Missouri or not, that are intriguing. And that includes Vanderbilt and Wake Forest. I know that's not one that we've talked about a lot on our channel. One, of course, you played in this time a year ago.
Mhm.
But I think that's got some implications for Vanderbilt and maybe the bottom of the SEC. But this is a much better slate of games this week than it was a week ago.
No, most definitely. And like you said, I mean, you're going to be able to, if your Saturday plans are to sit on the couch and watch college football, you're going to be able to do that from 10 a.m. till midnight if you want to and watch SEC ball. You got Vandy in the morning, you got Auburn on the West Coast late at night. And so, yeah, and a bunch of great ones in between, So I guess where we can start with is talking about, very briefly, you asked about Middle Tennessee and Mizzou. You and I, Chris, being Nashville guys, we know the program that MTSU is, and I think a lot of people hear, all these state state schools, and they think, oh, that is a good program they got over there. Coach Stockstill, they are a solid program, and so that is not a rollover game for Mizzou. They should win, and I'd be shocked if they didn't win. But that's a solid program. I mean, that was not it's Alabama. I understand they played them last week, but it wasn't a cupcake game really for anybody. Vandy Wake in the morning, going to be really interesting. I've called it a pivotal game for the Doors, to be honest with you, and kind of will kind of shape the rest of their season and momentum head into one more game with at UNLV at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas the next week, and then in the SEC play after that. But yeah, let's start with Bama, Texas, Chris, if you're ready to go with that.
I'm absolutely ready to go. And I think you had some thoughts on Steve Sarkisian and Jalen Milroe in this one that were maybe not mainstream talking
Yeah.
points that you wanted to bring up. So let's start there.
Yeah. Well, I think let's look at it from 30,000 feet of obviously these are two college football heavyweights. You got Alabama, Texas, the history, the tradition. This is literally what college football is all about. And so, if you're a college football fan, you're sitting on the couch. I totally understand. If you're a Texas A&M fan or Miami fan, your game's on at the same time. But the rest of the country's got this game on their TV. And, I think one of the things that, that's what the general public sees is, two big time programs, two great coaches, great players all over the field. But something that I think's, being under talked is the relationships between the two quarterbacks of the team and Steve Sarkisian, who obviously now is the head coach at the University of Texas. And so let's rewind the clock a little bit. There's actually this, I do remember this happening, but there's an article in the Austin American Statesman. It's a newspaper out of Austin, Texas, by Danny Davis. He did an incredible job of recapping kind of the timeline of what's really happened between these three guys. I'm talking about Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, and Steve Sarkisian. So how it happened is Jalen Milroe was a 4-star recruit out of Texas, committed to the University of Texas. So that in itself is a huge implication. He's playing a school he was formerly committed to. This is when Tom Herman was there. Sark had no association with the university or the team. Long story short, Quinn Ewers decides to commit to Texas. Milroe decommits 3 days later and commits to Sark in Alabama. Now, as we all know, Ewers reclassified in high school, started his career at Ohio State. That didn't work out and ended up coming home to the Longhorns. And so Sark and Jeff Banks, who is the special teams and tight ends coach at Texas, who was at Alabama with Starks, he's specifically named in this article. It was perfectly illustrated. Maybe we can get a link in here so people can check it out. But Milroe names those two guys specifically as how important they were into his factor in his decision to come to the University of Alabama. So long story short, Milroe shows up on campus. Sark gets the job at Texas. He never gets to coach him. And so anyway, long-winded, but an unbelievable matrix of connections there that I think maybe we're not talking about, or the general public doesn't look, deep enough into. Is this game is personal to those three guys, especially Milroe. I mean, let's be real. He would never admit it, and I probably wouldn't either if I were him. But he was committed to Texas. Ewers commits, and then he decommits and goes to Alabama. His original school that he wanted to go to is the team that he's playing on Saturday. That's the truth of it. And so, I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup. I'm interested to see, especially pre-game, post-game, what those interactions are like. But I think this game is personal for maybe besides Nick Saban, obviously the three most important people in this game.
I spent a while talking to one of my best friends yesterday, huge Alabama fan. This guy knows more football and is foreseeing more things than most people I know in media. He's like a football savant.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a big Alabama fan, but he's also realistic. And he said to me, I said, so how do you feel about this? He says, well, look, I think for just a long time, I felt like as an Alabama fan going into this game, we got this. I'm not that worried about it. Of course, Alabama usually gets tested a couple times a year, loses one somewhere, even with the great teams. But, a lot of those are Auburn, which is a rivalry game. And, some games, you run into Georgia, you run into a hot team here and there. Stuff happens, right? So he's realistic, but he's mostly been right.
Sure.
He says to me, he says, what makes me nervous? He says, when I listen to Nick Saban talk about all his ex-assistants, he said, I think I hear him say more good things about Steve Sarkisian than I do anybody else. And he said, that makes me nervous.
Yeah. And let's be real. I mean, I remember when Sark was a coach out in the West Coast and, got in trouble for, whatever he did that, we won't really get into. Anyway, he's closed that chapter on his life, and no one questioned how good he was as a football coach. He's proven that over time. And so, like a lot of people, a lot of coaches we've seen, they kind of come in and reestablish themselves as assistants under Saban at Alabama. That's what Kiffin did. It's what Sark did. It's what a lot of coaches have done. It's exactly, remember, that's exactly what Butch Jones did when he got fired from Tennessee. I don't want to open the can of worms for our Tennessee people here, but if we remember, that was his first stop after being fired on Rocky Top. But yes, you're right. Like I hear the same thing, Chris. I hear him, talk about Sark, and I can really see why. And especially when you turn on the game from last year, I went and rewatched it yesterday. Actually, Sark is unbelievably creative when it comes to his offense. Unbelievably creative. And now, he's been there for, I guess this is year 2 now. He's got some players under his belt that he knows he can get the ball to. He's got tight ends who can run. He's got receivers who can roll. Xavier Worthy is one of the best guys in the country. And if he has a great game on Saturday, I think a lot of more people in this conference are going to find out who he is. I mean, they obviously will next year when they join. But and also too, obviously Steve Sarkisian is an offensive coach, but if there's any coach out there that knows Jalen Milroe better, it's him. And so what's he doing collaborating with his defensive staff, being able to put together a game plan of, okay, here's how to stop the guy. I know his strengths. I know his weaknesses. I'm telling you, there's just, big picture, it's Alabama, it's Texas, huge traditions, huge programs. There's so many small intricacies in this game that I think are just as important and interesting as, the bigger picture. And so, I feel like I'm going to be watching this game a little bit differently, looking for those, kind of like that chess match between Sark and Saban, and then Milroe and Ewers. Man, I'm just really excited about it because I think it's going to be one of the more unique games of the year.
Well, you say chessboard. I'm interested to watch what pieces are out there on the chessboard tomorrow night, and maybe this is one of these games where you're Alabama. Maybe you're glad it's an evening game rather than a morning game. Maybe just a few hours makes a difference in getting guys healthy. But I think if most people have been paying attention, Jalen Key, well, a couple of key guys, really three guys in Alabama's secondary have been banged up. Jalen Key had 31 snaps last week, got hurt in the second quarter on a kickoff play. Christian Story replaced him at safety. Game time decision for Jalen Key is from the latest I can find, which I think was yesterday afternoon. Malachi Moore, who got 41 snaps in that game, got replaced by redshirt freshman Earl Little, who was a top 100 recruit out of high school, a redshirt freshman. Malachi Moore, a game time decision. And Devontae Smith, their safety, didn't play in the opener with the foot injury. Can't find much on that one, but it sounds like he might help them this week. So I think you don't want to be down key defensive backs. And here's the thing people may not think of sometimes. I get that Alabama's got talent. Alabama's got depth. A lot of times they're able to find guys who step in behind them. But, what happens if you get another guy hurt? Then you're really kind of in trouble.
Yeah.
And this is the Texas passing attack with Quinn Ewers, Xavier Worthy, that has an explosive dimension to it. And so I'm very interested to watch Alabama's health and what they've got heading into this, because that could be a thing that when we rewind this on Monday, we say, hey, that was the difference in this game.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Before I say anything, I want to preface, are the three guys that we're talking about here, none of them have been deemed officially out, correct?
I believe they're all game time decisions, day to day. That kind. I think day to day was the term technically that Nick Saban has used.
So my take on all this is like, look, you get nicked up all the time. It's the first game of the year. Guys are still getting in condition. Your body's literally adjusting to game speed, game power, how you're taking hits in your shoulders, like that all that stuff that happens in week one. It really does. Because you're hitting way harder in games than you are in practice. A lot of those aren't concerning to me, but the one that is Malachi Moore. And I remember when we played him last year, he's not the standout guy like Brian Branch was, or maybe some other guys in the secondary. I mean, Brian Branch had a pick six for Detroit last night in his first NFL game. I mean, they had some real talent. Malachi Moore is a talented player for him and a veteran guy. I remember him coming out of high school, actually was a big time guy out of Hewitt-Trussville, which is a giant high school in Alabama. Veteran guy. If he's out and Texas kind of has their way on offense and lights up the scoreboard a little bit, I'm not saying they're going to score 50 or 40, but has their way in the passing game, I think that's definitely one we can circle and say, man, I wonder if that defense looks a little bit different if Malachi Moore's out there. He's an important part of their defense for sure. He plays a little bit of special teams as well. It was a guy that we zeroed in on when we played him last year. He's just kind of a dynamic player. Not all world, but does a lot of the little things really well. And so if that guy's out, I would maybe raise my level of concern a little bit. No panic, but definitely raise my concern a little bit if I'm a Bama fan.
I'm very interested to see what Jalen Milroe looks like tomorrow, too. You mentioned the motivation factors and all those things. But here's the thing. We spend our offseason, I say we, the media, spend its offseason looking at Alabama's quarterback room. And sometimes cliches, we give them power that maybe they shouldn't have, because what did everybody say, Gavin? If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any. Or,
that's right.
In Alabama's case, if you got three, you don't have any. Well, guess what? Alabama doesn't usually recruit chumps. And I'll give you two NFL examples. If you want to go back 15 years or whatever it's been, the Green Bay drafted Aaron Rodgers with Brett Favre still there.
Yeah.
Two guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. At some point, Green Bay might have had two quarterbacks. Didn't mean they had zero. If you want to go further back than that, Steve Young and Joe Montana were on the same 49ers roster. That's not usually how it happens. I get that, but Alabama's not a usual standard for a program. Look, Tyler Simpson was a top 35 recruit. He's their second or third string quarterback. Jalen Milroe did some great things a year ago. And I wonder if perhaps that narrative sort of took a life of its own, and Jalen Milroe plays with his hair on fire Saturday. We look up and he's shooting up the Heisman odds boards, and if so, it's a different conversation. That's a lot of ifs and a lot of hypotheticals.
Sure.
But as I was thinking about that and watching the way that Jalen Milroe played a week ago, I thought, I wonder how much of a sort of a false narrative was perhaps built into this Alabama team coming into the season.
Man, I don't know if I'd use the term false narrative. I think this is we all know it, but it's such a pivotal game really for both programs, but Milroe specifically, because if he goes out there and plays well and is kind of, I don't want to say the reason they won, but has a huge impact on winning, then he's going to be the guy the rest of the year. He's fully secures the job. I'm a little skeptical. I'm not sure that if they struggle on Saturday in the first half, if we see another guy in the third, it's in the third quarter. It's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but
he's pulled that before.
Yeah, he pulled, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and I know it's like you got Tua behind Jalen Hurts. Both guys are obviously NFL caliber quarterbacks. They may not have that luxury this time around, but if Nick Saban can pull it off and do that at halftime of the national championship game, he's going to do it week 2 against Texas if he needs the chance. And so again, like I'm saying, I'm rooting for Jalen Milroe. He's really fun to watch. But if they struggle and maybe have a 7-10 point deficit at halftime, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw another guy run out there for the second half. But at the same time, like I said, Milroe goes out there and plays well, has a huge impact on winning, then I think he fully solidifies himself as the guy the rest of the year. And like you said, what that comes with, shooting up the Heisman boards, becoming the talk of the SEC. This is a ginormous 60 minutes for Jalen Milroe. It's kind of going to define the rest of his Alabama career, if we're being honest.
Any further thoughts on Texas and Alabama? I know we're going to talk Ole Miss Tulane. That's an intriguing game to me. As I mentioned, I think there's 6 to 7 interesting games on the schedule. We're going to spend most of our time probably on those big 2. We'll get into some others, and I'm going to get into some comments in a minute because we do try to respond to watchers and listeners here and hit some of their questions and comments. But before we go into that, anything else on Texas and Alabama you wanted to hit here?
Well, I think so. Let's hit on my man Jay Steele's comment right here, because we've been talking a bunch about the pass game and Sarkisian and quarterbacks, but let's talk about the line of scrimmage, because that's really where it starts. And so you look at Alabama as Alabama in the trenches. They have first-round picks at tackle, first-round picks at guard, first-round picks on the defensive line. Alabama is going to have that through and through. The big guys in high school football and now transfer worlds with the portal, the best guys go to Alabama. Texas is not. They're not Alabama in the trenches. They're not, but they're way, way better than they were in the Tom Herman years and the Charlie Strong years that we remember when we claimed Texas is back, but they really weren't back. They're way better in the trenches than they were previously. And so if you pulled up, like I know we see sometimes, like, who has the advantage position wise, Alabama has the advantage, probably both in the offensive and defensive line, but Texas can hold their own. They got the guys, and they just got to be able to, put it on tape on Saturday.
All right, let's hit some things here. I'll just go in order. Our friend Chris Cobb says A&M 56 to U14. Now, Chris, I might slow you roll on that a little bit, but I do think 3.5 doesn't seem enough to me here, Gavin.
I agree. And here's my deal, and this is kind of going to be my tangent here about this game. Is, as we've said previously in other shows, A&M is totally my wild card team of the year. They could run the table and be in Atlanta at the end of the year, or we could be looking at another nightmare year like last year, and who knows how that truly ends. But their opponent they're playing, the University of Miami, in my opinion, as a player, I've knowing teammates in the locker room that I've been with, we had a guy last year transfer to the University of Miami from Vanderbilt. I've met and grown up with kids at a high school who are going to the University of Miami. The difference in the University of Miami today and what it was when they were rocking, right? When they had all those guys and they were winning and just totally beating up on everybody, is the people and the kids and everybody who are choosing to go to the university right now or to go play for the U. They're not necessarily. It's hard for me to truly believe that football is number one on their mind, to be honest with you. And the reason I say that is, and it would be too, if I was the head coach at Miami or assistant coach, a part of my pitch is come play football in Miami, live it up. You got all that stuff right here. But now in the day and age of social media and what this world has really come to, and it's all about look what I got and this and that. I mean, that's why Miami hasn't even been close, not even close to what they were, what they used to be when they were winning all the time. And I am a big believer in Mario Cristobal. I think he did a great job at Oregon. Now he's back home at Miami. Is that kind of like a perfect marriage, bringing the alum back? I hope so, because the U's fun. The U's a lot of fun. I just think that, to be honest with you, you look at 18 to 22-year-old college kids and you're recruiting them to come into, play in South Beach. They're working, but what are they doing on the weekends? What are they doing? And meanwhile, in Tuscaloosa or Auburn or Oxford, it's a college town, but you're not going to Miami nightclubs or doing whatever it may be. And so I really hope that the U gets back to where it was. I do, but I think that they are a couple years ahead. And like I said, I think that A&M is a wild card team, and if they can put it together, I'm not saying they're going to beat them 56-14 or whatever our man Chris said, but I do think that they should win, and they should win probably by like 10 plus, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, my memory of the U last year was the team that was getting blown out by Pitt with the third quarterback and losing to Middle Tennessee State and by double digits at that. Those kind of things. And I know they're better. And you could say, hey, A&M wasn't exactly, a house on fire last year either. Didn't go to a bowl game, won 5 games, but you look, and A&M was still right there with a lot of teams, one play away from beating Alabama. I think scoring margin was -3 per game. I mean, A&M was right there against some pretty good teams, and it didn't just happen. And, oh, by the way, won the game a year ago, back before maybe Miami got disinterested. But point being here is I've got more evidence to convince me that A&M is ahead of schedule and getting back to where it wants to be than I do Miami at this point. And I guess we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably the best way to sum it up, to be honest with you, Chris. And like I said, I think, in tomorrow's game, I think A&M wins it. They're further ahead as a program, kind of to get back to what their standard or level of play is than Miami. I'm not saying Miami's a crappy program and never will be. Like I said, I hope, man, we all remember it. Those were some bad dudes. Those were some bad dudes.
The team that played Ohio State in the national title game had like 40-something people that played in the NFL. It's crazy.
Ridiculous. And that's fun. It's good for college football. And we need Miami back, but I'm afraid it's not this year.
Okay, Charles asks, how well do you expect Missouri's defense to be this season? Look, I've been all off season saying I think this team was maybe the most undervalued team in the SEC because of the defense. The whole secondary returns. Tyron Hopper's good. That they've got some dudes up front. I watched that South Dakota game, and I have some concerns on offense. Although with Brady Cook in there, they were good enough. But in the defense, and to get at South Dakota's a horrible offensive team, but you could just see physical traits I felt like in Missouri that feel like they should translate. I don't know that Middle Tennessee State is a litmus test for that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Let's see. Missouri's first, is Kansas State next week. That'll be one of the bigger ones. But I mean, I think it's legit. But you actually played against that defense a year ago, so I would love to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think I discussed this on a previous show as well. Is they were definitely the biggest surprise of last year for me as my opponent. When I say my opponent, I'm talking about the team's defense, not necessarily the team as a whole, but the team's defense, specifically defensive ends, specifically safeties, because that's usually who tight ends are matched up with, whether it's the run game or the pass game. Missouri's defensive line is big, is long, explosive, Just as much. I don't want to say Georgia and Alabama, but right up there, probably right underneath them as those guys. And I don't know if that was a point of emphasis on the recruiting trail for Mizzou or whatever it was. But man, that is by far the strength of their team is their defensive front specifically, and then have really really talented guys in the back end as well. And we struggled to score them last year. That ended up being like a low scoring game, which is always frustrating, especially as an offensive player. But I think if Mizzou can, I think that we are, because of what we saw last year, we're assuming that Missouri's defense is going to be the same. I think that's a big ask in my opinion, just because that was unlike any other Mizzou defensive team that I've seen previously. But if it is, and we see some steps in the right direction offensively, Missouri could be a dangerous team. They could. And, if their standard on defense is there and then they play at that level all year, they just have to be a little bit better on offense to become a pretty good team that can, beat a lot of teams in this conference.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm buying. I think it's legit just because most of those guys are back, and I feel like they hit the depth a little bit in the portal too, which is always going to help. Okay, Charles asks, what about the nosebleed seat story? Is that rumor true? I don't know if I've missed something. I guess is he referring to Texas fans being put up in the upper deck at Bryant-Denny tomorrow?
I have no idea. I do remember, and I'm literally just talking here, I do remember when LSU played at Texas and Texas put LSU's band in the top deck. Yeah. I remember when that happened, but I haven't heard anything. Maybe I haven't been paying close attention enough to where Texas fans are sitting. But
no, they put them. They paid it back. They put Texas gets, I think, a 5,000 seat allotment, including the band, and they put them in the upper deck. So I presume that's what he meant.
Wow. Here. Well, got to go in there and earn it. Got to go in there and earn the win, I guess, but go do it the hard way. We'll see.
Yeah, let's see. I think we might have thrown this one up earlier. Yeah, I mean, this has been the topic all season. And here's a good one. I'm going to jump us into Tulane here and Ole Miss in a minute. But first, a reminder, always looking for sponsors. You can see how to get in touch with us below. We've had some pretty explosive growth here at the channel recently. Be happy to share those numbers with you, but I'll just say we've got a unique audience that's well into six figures now on a month-to-month basis. So there's that. And we do have a sponsor right now. It is Andy Ludicky of myperfectfranchise.net. And if you're out there looking for sort of a change, maybe wanting to do something different, looking to maybe own your own business and control your life, go talk to Andy. He will spend a lot of time with you, and he will not charge for this part. He'll just sit down and try to understand you, what your skills are, what your goals are, and maybe more importantly, what your priorities in life are. Some of us have kids and ball games and things like that, that we need to work around. And sometimes working for somebody else does not lend you the kind of life that lends itself to spending time with your kids. Andy has got so many working relationships with franchises. He knows those in and out. He knows a good way. He's done just a tremendous job at matching people with franchises that present the right opportunities. This is not a money-driven thing on his part. Again, he spends a lot of time helping you for free. They are not in this to stick you with the franchise that pays them the most commission or whatever. Andy genuinely cares about people, wants them to find that right opportunity. So because of his extensive knowledge and connections with franchises, he will sit down, he will take what you give him, give it some thought, and he will match you with the right place for you. Andy Ludicky has helped, I don't know how many hundreds of people find the right place for them. So look them up at myperfectfranchise.net. Tell Andy that you heard about him here at Southeastern 14, and I think you'll be very happy you did. Good man and a proud sponsor of this show. Okay, Tulane and Ole Miss.
Yep.
I think another terrific game. I think the over-under that has gone up, and I think for good reason. I'm still not sure it's enough. In fact, it is. What is it that I wrote down before the show? I will find this. It is 66.5. I think it was 60.5 earlier, which made no sense to me. I guess the public has agreed on that, but Michael Pratt last week was 14 of 15 against a pretty good South Alabama team for almost 300 yards. Can run the ball. Partially sprained ankle. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means he's hobbled, if they shoot him up with stuff, and you never know the difference. But you were a high school quarterback. Maybe not as mobile as Michael Pratt, but you could run a little bit. I saw you play.
Yeah.
How do you size up that news here and how it affects the game?
So, well, I mean, we're just totally spitballing here. He may have something that he can't even walk. This may be a total rumor. We have no clue. So, if it is something, I guess we can touch on it. They probably will shoot it up, and what that looks like, it's just like a little numbing steroid, and basically it feels like you got like your whole foot, your foot doesn't bend like this way. It's just kind of flat the whole time. And so, yeah, that absolutely affects the quarterback position. It affects the tight end position because you can't, dig your front cleats in the ground. Trust me,
You're speaking from experience on this one, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm speaking. Sprained ankle.
Yeah. If this is real, and again, like this is, I mean, I have no idea if this is even true or not, but if it is, how that usually works is you've sprained ankle, the outside of your ankle totally swells. They'll try to get that down to as much as they can. You go through pregame warmups, no shot. You go through pregame warmups, all that stuff, no shot. You go into the locker room before the team runs out, and they go right in underneath the joint and shoot it with a steroid. And like I said, it numbs the whole foot, probably just up to your Achilles, and it just doesn't let you flex as much. And so that would absolutely affect his ability as a runner. As a thrower, it depends on which ankle. If he's planning on it, maybe. If he's pushing off it, maybe it looks different. But I think overall this game is being super overshadowed, obviously, by the big one with Texas and Bama. But I mean, these are two teams that could really potentially be in a New Year's Six bowl. If we're being honest, Tulane did it last year. What can Lane Kiffin do this year with the momentum of last year, and now some weapons with Judkins and Dart and all those guys? So I'm super interested. I'm definitely going to be tuning in this game. You'd probably be flipping back and forth as well if Bama and Texas are on at the same time. Is that what you said?
Yeah, let me look up the times again. Well, Tulane and Texas A&M are at the same time. That will not overlap with Alabama.
Gotcha.
Well,
gotcha.
I mean, I say it won't.
Yeah.
I hear you. The way that they structure TV timeouts these days.
That's a whole nother show. That's a whole.
We could do a whole show on that
whole
one.
Other show.
But yeah, football's just gone off the rails. By the way, speaking of off the rails, and I'm not going to get it. Did you see the story about Cal and Stanford this week? The proposals they might be playing their home games in Dallas.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll just leave it there and maybe discuss that for another time. But just further proof that there's no leadership in college football. But anyway, carry on.
Anyway, sorry, I totally forgot where I was.
After I dropped the bomb on you there.
Yeah. Those are two topics that we can make for another show. But for now, Tulane and Ole Miss. No, I think this is a completely overshadowed game by the big one in Texas and Bama. Two potential New Year's Six teams. Obviously, Tulane got it last year and beat SC. And so I'm really interested to see what this looks like. It'll be a fun game. It's at Tulane, which, as everyone knows, is a ginormous party school. It'll be probably rocking down there with an SEC team coming to town. It'll be hot. It'll be muggy in Louisiana. It'll be a tremendous atmosphere. I'm jealous if any of our viewers are going to the game. I think it's going to be an awesome game to attend. But I think in the end, I really do. I think there's more weapons on the Ole Miss side. I predict. I think it'll be their classic, shooting, high scoring college football game, which everyone loves to watch. But I do think that Ole Miss will end up, pulling away in the end. I think they're too talented with Judkins, with Dart, and now they have all these receivers that can catch 4 touchdowns a game. They just got people all over the place. But man, I'd be remiss if I didn't hit on my man Willie Fritz and the job he's done down there. I mean, that guy's won everywhere, and just looking down his resume, was at Central Missouri forever, Sam Houston State, Georgia Southern, now Tulane, and he's won championships, whether it be national championships at smaller level, conference championships, and now last year with the Cotton Bowl against USC. he's 63 years old. And so it's not like he, if they go to another New Year's Six, is he going to be like a hot name that guys are talking about next year? Probably not. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how good of a job that guy's done down there. And who knows, maybe he does want kind of the little farewell tour and may take a job at a Power 5 if he gets him back to that place. But Willie Fritz is one of the best coaches in the country, and it'll be fun to see that matchup with Kiffin for sure.
Yeah, look, for the record, I think this is going to be a track meet that Ole Miss will win, probably by double digits. But I will throw this out there. Tulane's defense played really well a week ago against South Alabama. Now, I think it's a different challenge against Ole Miss. You mentioned all the pass catchers they've got. Trey Harris had a first 5 minutes for the ages last week after transferring in from Louisiana Tech, where he was very productive. So don't get it wrong. I think Ole Miss is going to win.
Agreed.
And maybe I don't know if decisively is the word or whatever, but I think clearly I don't think this is going to last possession. But if I'm wrong about that, remember we told you Tulane's defense played pretty well a week ago, and maybe that's a little bit of an under-discussed topic going into this one.
Yeah. Well, I think, even and tuning back to last year, that Cotton Bowl game was 46-45 was the final. And so they're playing another high-powered offense in Ole Miss, just like SC was. And this game is gonna be up there for sure. If I had to predict as well, I would say Ole Miss wins it somewhere like 56-41. It'll be high scoring, like really high scoring, but I'm not exactly sure if it'll be like you said, come down like the last possession where we're all can't believe what's going on in the last 2 minutes and talk, and then that's a whole other discussion for clock rules is all that stuff. So,
all right. We've got a few questions and comments we'll get to. I might leave that to the end of the show. We've got, let's do some quick hitters here, and I'll just go in order of kickoff. We got Vanderbilt at Wake, ACC Network, 10 Central start time, Wake, a 10-point favorite. This, to me, is the most important Vanderbilt game for that program under Clark Lee, probably in several years. If you want to go back beyond him to Derek Mason's tenure, I think this is a game that Vanderbilt has a hard time getting to a bowl without winning. I don't know exactly what to think. I think that Vanderbilt is better than what we saw the first 2 weeks. I think with A.J. Swan and that receiving crew, they can put up some points at Wake. Wake did give up, I think, 4 sacks a week ago. Which, like, when you're on that Vandy team last year, it beat Kentucky the way you want it. You got pressure on Will Levis and made some stuff happen. So maybe that's a recipe. But what concerns me for Vanderbilt is just it has not been able to stop teams that are proficient at passing in a long, long time. And I know Griffiths isn't Hartman, but he's been in that system while, and he's pretty good. And I don't know that it's the best matchup for Vandy in that respect.
Well, it's super unique, and if anyone has looked, I mean, probably the most, especially for SEC fandom, hasn't really paid close attention to Wake Forest, but they do this super funky, weird offense that is called the slow mesh. And so basically, all the time, what you see is, in the SEC specifically, when there's a running threat at quarterback, you'll do a zone read, which is just classic. The offensive line blocks inside zone to the right, you leave one guy unblocked on the left edge, and that's for the quarterback. Is he giving it or is he keeping it? That's football 101. Now, what Wake Forest has done is instead of reading that guy on the edge, they'll block him. And now Hartman last year, or the quarterback at Wake Forest, is slowly, like, it's almost like who's going to take it? Am I going to take it or are you going to take it? Slowly holding it in his chest. And instead of reading an end, he's reading a safety, and they have a post behind it. And so they're making the safety commit to, am I playing the pass or am I playing the run? And they feel strong enough up front to where they can hold those blocks, because that ball, I'm not kidding, that ball snapped and will be held in the guy's chest for like 2.5, 3 seconds. They'll walk forwards, and the whole time the guy's looking at the post safety to see if he's going to bite on the run or throw it over the top. And so I'm sure Vandy has a game plan for that. Everybody does, and no one's really seemed to figure it out yet. But if you guys have a chance, if your plan is to sit on the couch and watch college football all day, turn on that 10 a.m. Vandy Wake game and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about with Wake's offense. It's super unique. It kind of makes you say, what the heck are they doing? But there is some purpose behind it for sure. Vandy's got to establish themselves early with the pass rush for sure, getting pressure on them, making that slow mesh uncomfortable, and then score points. And if they can do that, they definitely give themselves a chance. But yeah, definitely a huge game. Definitely a huge game.
Okay, 11 a.m. Central, Ball State. Again, a 42.5-point underdog at Georgia. I just don't think that's worth discussing.
No.
If it ends up being worth discussing, we might have an interesting show on Monday, but I don't think we will in that regard. We talked about Ole Miss, Tulane, A&M, and Miami. Both those kick off at 2:30 Central. First is on ESPN2, A&M and Miami on ABC. Kent State and Arkansas. Sorry, Arkansas fans. We did talk about you plenty yesterday. There's just not much to talk about here in a game that Arkansas might win by 159 points tomorrow, even without Rocket Sanders. Texas and Alabama, that's 6 on ESPN. We talked about that one. MTSU and Missouri, we hit on that one a little bit. Here's two we haven't talked about. Arizona and Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm careful in reading too much into beating an FCS opponent, but I just really liked a lot of what I saw out of Mississippi State a week ago.
Yeah.
I thought it was solid. I thought it handled some of the transition things pretty well. Arizona could put up some points, but it can't defend very much. And I think State's defense, even without Forbes, looked pretty good a week ago. They got 2 linebackers that I'm going to guess have probably racked up more tackles than any linebacking duo in the NCAA right now.
Yeah.
I trust Mississippi State to take care of that one, but Arizona can put a few points up there. So if that one goes a little bit sideways, that's maybe something to watch.
I think it's definitely something to watch. As you said, I think I expect Mississippi State to take care of this game. If they don't, definitely in for an interesting show on Monday. But no, I think the strength of Mississippi State, and this is what I've said to it's what I said while I was a player, but especially now removed from it and seeing it, from a bird's eye view. Mississippi State, I don't know if it's the hogs they find in deep Starkville, Mississippi, but they have been able to produce some real deal talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Jeffrey Simmons, Montez Sweat, Emmanuel Forbes, I'm talking big time NFL players, not just guys that got drafted, big time NFL players, and on the defensive side of the ball. And now, I assume that's their standard of pedigree they have there. What they have with Rodgers, what they're doing with Mike Wright. We've talked extensively about that, Chris. It's such a wrinkle that makes the other team have to prepare for, because he's a guy that if you're step for step with him, he's going to be crossing the goal line. You're still at the 10 while he's crossing the goal line. And so it makes them prepare for a whole nother dimension of an offense when you're so used to Mississippi State seeing you snap it on first down, throw it for 5, snap it on second down, throw it for 6. And now they bring 14 in. He's able to run. I think that definitely creates some chaos inside the defensive coordinator's mind.
Okay, this is probably one, and we talk about anything and everything, and I can't say we probably undercover a lot of things, but I probably, and of course we lost today to a holiday this week, but I think Auburn-Cal is going to be an interesting game.
I like that game.
I just trust Hugh Freeze to go out there. We don't know if Jarquez Hunter is going to play or not. Hugh Freeze has been very coy on that. Mm-hmm. Look, they may not need him given the quarterback play they got last week. Now, Cal's got a running back who's a headache, and I'm not sure I entirely trust Auburn's defense yet. So if Cal can run the ball, keep racking up first downs, that keeps Auburn's defense off the field. And maybe, look, I thought that Auburn would be maybe a little bit more than a 6.5-point favorite, and maybe that's your reason. Now, the over-under on this, I don't gamble, but if I did, if I was going to put money on anything this week, it's a 54.5-point over-under on covers.com right now. That seems a little low to me. I don't know if you got a chance to see Auburn under Hugh Freeze last week, but I want to get your thoughts here.
Well, this game, I like this game. I'm a little biased, but there's a lot of personal stuff in this game for me. There's 2 guys, 2 team captains actually. Elijah McAllister on the Auburn side is a dear friend of mine, played with me for 5 years at Vandy. And then on the other side is middle linebacker Jackson Sermon, who was my best friend in high school, team captain at Cal. I mean, these are two guys that are going to be standing next to each other in my marriage, and so this is a huge game, one that I'm definitely going to be watching, just because two of my better buddies are playing against each other. I was originally planning on going out there to watch this game in person in Berkeley, but I actually have a wedding to go to, which is, so classic this time of year that I'm sure everyone hates doing. But
do we get a rant here for this one?
No, I'm gonna hold it in. Because I got love for my boys in this game. But I'm excited to see them. Excited to see them match up. But let's start with Auburn. I think Auburn is still. I think they established themselves well last week, but especially with what Harsin left behind, and I know Freeze has been in the portal and whatnot. But they're still a team trying to find their identity, and they're not going to find it in that week 1 win, over a cupcake game or whatever. You're going on the road, West Coast, way out of anything comfort zone, to Berkeley. And I know it's Berkeley, it's Cal, it's Pac-12 football. It's their home opener, and an SEC team's coming to town. They're going to bring it. And I'm excited to see what that energy is like on TV. I wish I was there in person, but also to see those two guys compete. Cal does have a running back who's a headache. You're right. So what's Auburn's defense look like? Can they really establish themselves up front to their standard, but the standard of the SEC? If the standard of the SEC is their standard on defensive line, then they should take care of them, no problem. But as I said, they're a team in transition still, a team still trying to find their identity. If they can come away with this one with a big win, I think it's gonna, I don't want to say leapfrog them, but definitely push them in the right direction. For Cal, they've got a coach, Justin Wilcox, who's been there for a while. They're basically a complete opposite team of Auburn, have established guys, established identity, established process, and all that stuff sounds like coach talk, but I promise you it's important, especially in this day and age with portal players and everybody kind of being on the same page in a road game in unfamiliar territory on, the northwest of California, wherever. It's going to be an interesting game. I really wish I was there, but I got two of my best buddies in there, Jack and Elijah, two guys that will be standing next to each other in my wedding, and so super pumped for that game. But I also think it's going to be really fun for the general public as well.
All right, let's end on the lightning round today with kind of questions and comments. David Stewart wants to know, what does KJ Jefferson have to do to get the national recognition he deserves? I'll start here. I mean, look, I don't perceive KJ Jefferson as being disrespected nationally. I've seen him on a lot of preseason all SEC teams. Sometimes it's first team, sometimes that's third. I think what hurts him a little bit is two things. First of all, he's sharing the spotlight with Rocket Sanders, so hard to win the Heisman or whatever if you're maybe the second best offensive player on your team. I don't know if that's the case or not, but just saying there's a little bit of a spotlight to be shared. Second of all, look, they played Western Carolina last week. They played Kent State this week. You're not going to be at the forefront of any conversations unless you're maybe Alabama or Georgia with that schedule. So I think that the jury's out on that one.
Yeah, I think the jury's out, and I think you just said it perfectly. Is I don't know if any people who really watch college football, not the general public, but people who really watch and understand and see the good players, we all know how good of a player and how dynamic KJ Jefferson is. We all know that. That's not something. But in order to get that next national recognition, it's exactly what you said. Arkansas's got to take that next step. They got to beat a team like Bama. They got to beat a team like Georgia when they match up with them. And they've yet to kind of get over the hump there, to be honest with you. And once they do, and because a win like that is going to attract national attention. And when you attract national attention, people are going to be looking at your best plays from your best players in the biggest game. And so, I think KJ Jefferson is my favorite player to watch in the entire conference. He really is. If Arkansas is on TV, I'm watching him because I love watching KJ Jefferson play. But I think Arkansas, if they want to get that next, recognition, especially for KJ, they gotta knock off a really good team and maybe in an emphatic fashion.
Okay, Charles is commenting on what we talked about earlier with the report that Cal and Stanford might play home games in Dallas, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Hey, I think we're calling the ACC the All Coast Conference here these days. I think that's what one of our listeners decided on. I think that's brilliant. Hey, get an East and a West division. Maybe that solves things. I mean, I don't know. I don't think. Look, Stanford. is so much further west than whatever the westernmost SEC team is. I don't
Yeah.
know that solves the problem, but it's better than playing games in Dallas.
Yeah.
I mean,
That
how
would
do you
be
recruit to that? Like, like
yeah,
you
you
tell your
don't.
parents, hey, come catch me on campus
Yeah.
sometimes in Palo Alto, but then when you want to see me play football, come catch me in Dallas. And I think trying to recruit to that would be a nightmare.
I really I mean, it's as ridiculous as we're making it sound. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. I would be shocked if that ends up being true and they actually end up doing it. If they do, it's probably the beginning of the end of college football, to be honest with you.
Texas is so entitled and disrespectful, they'll probably complain about the, I'm not a Texas lover. I'm not a Texas hater. Now my wife graduated from Nebraska back when they were all in the Big 12 together.
Mhm.
And I will just tell you this, that conference had no love for Texas.
No love.
Texas seems to be making some enemies wherever it goes. Again, I don't care, but it's the hate for Texas is it's out there.
Yeah. No, it's definitely I mean, I think, like, and this is I think for Texas, it's been such like I can literally recall 2, 3, maybe even 4 games that I've seen, big games in recent memory that Texas has won, and I've been like, okay, yeah, they're officially back, right? That's the kind of funny thing that everyone talks about is Texas back? When's Texas gonna get back? Texas is back. No, they're not. And I remember the Tyrone Swoops overtime game in Austin versus Notre Dame, and he dives over the end zone, and the announcer says, "Texas is back, folks." Well, they weren't. They just had a great game. I remember when Sam Ehlinger and them won the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and he said, "We're back." Well, are we all the way back, or are we just good back to being, respected and we win 8, 9 games, or are we back to, the Vince Young years, the Colt McCoy years? Because those were good Texas teams, man. I remember that was my first football memory. It was in 2005. I was 6 years old. I remember when Vince Young scored against USC in that Rose Bowl. It's why I wore the number 10 my whole career. It had a huge impact on me, and it's funny because as I read this article, as I was telling our viewers, from Danny Davis in the Austin Statesman, and Jalen Milroe in the article goes on to talk about how important and how impactful Vince Young was to him when he played at Texas. And so that's what I'm talking about, these intricacies in these games. The SEC, it just means more. Well, I think this game means a lot more to Jalen Milroe and maybe a little bit to Quinn Ewers as well. And so, man, I'm fired up. I know we're getting near the end here, Chris. I wish it was Saturday so we could just hang up and go watch ball, but I can't wait till these games start. I really can't.
That, in my opinion, USC and Texas was the greatest college football game ever played, and I think part of what made it great. I mean, that's one that was over. I remember watching with our brother, and we just looked at each other and said, "They're going to be talking about that one for as long as we live." I mean, plus you had Keith Jackson on the call. Miss him dearly. He was phenomenal. But that was a game I think I could go back and watch today and still be thoroughly entertained, even knowing how it comes out.
Yeah. Well, I remember they every once in a while they'll air it on something, and when it's on TV, whether it's ESPN or whatever they're playing on, maybe ABC, people, there's a chatter about or a conversation on Twitter. It's that impactful. It was just an unbelievable game, and Vince Young scoring obviously had a huge impact on me, but also Jalen Milroe, and so I'm excited to see what those intricacies look like come Saturday.
Eric says that they're talking about tickets going for $500 or more. Of course, Tulane's got its own outdoor stadium. I'm trying to find the capacity on it. I can't find it in front of me, but I'd be interested to know there.
I can see it. But
yeah, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was. That's exactly what I was. Oh, hold on a second. That's exactly what I was excited about, was because it's out of character for Ole Miss to be playing and a group of 5 on the road game, but like it's I don't know if they're both ranked, but like it's damn near a top 25 matchup, or at least implications for a New Year's Six. So here we go. It's called Yulman Stadium. Yeoman Stadium, which I guess they formerly had a Tulane Stadium, but they redid it. Let's see. I'm not exactly sure what the
So we're
capacity
saying
is,
30,000, a little more.
but it
So,
looks pretty sweet. It looks pretty
yeah.
sweet. But yeah, that's what I'm saying is it's going to be a rowdy atmosphere. Tulane, huge party school right in the heart of Louisiana. It's going to be hot. It's going to be muggy, and they got an SEC school coming to town. That's what everyone's talking on campus right now. It's Friday on campus. That's the talk of campus at Tulane is they can't wait to get that party started tomorrow and try to make it hell for the Rebels.
All right, Sam's got a name for it. He calls it the BBC conference, the best of both coasts conference. I don't know.
I don't know if that one will pass. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I still like the Big Pack
The Big Pack
or the All Coast Conference, whatever. Sam, no, they're not playing in the Dome. But anyway, I'm surprised the Dome is still standing. I mean, it's old. It's been through hurricanes. I've been to a game there. Went to the old Florida national title game mid-90s before you were around. So yeah,
that was probably a good
one.
Fun.
That was a lot of fun. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, we'll close it up today. Again, looking for some sponsorship help. That's how we pay the bills. We do thank myperfectfranchise.net for their sponsorship there. We will probably do some sort of live reaction on Saturday. I say probably, haven't nailed that down yet. Probably depends on what the games look like too. But just, subscribe, hit your notifications. That way, if we do go live, you can know about it. Certainly, we will be back on Monday with our usual slew of predictions. We'll be back on Monday with our daily show, which goes 11 to noon. I'm a staple of that. Gavin's in it more often than not. Blake's in it some. But in any case, we'll have content for you live 11 to noon Central every day next week. For Gavin Schoenwald, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14. This is the SEC Daily. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Hang on a minute.
It's the Ethernet cable.
It is. That's why I opened the door.
Gosh. Oh, man.
This is ridiculous.
It's going to be a 2 hour